the Horror Screens podcast, an extension of the Horror Screens Video Vault website. I'm your host, Peter, alongside Stephen, and in this episode we will be talking about the 1971 film Dracula vs. Frankenstein as part of our Retro Rewind section. Our main topic of discussion will be all about the Christmas horror movies that's been released throughout many decades. But before all that, we're going to talk about what we watched recently. And Stephen, we attended this year's Fright Fest Halloween event at Cineworld Cinema, Leicester Square in London. And what did we watch?
Oh, we watched a lot of films, Pete, didn't we? We watched a lot of films in one day. 6, in fact, I think it was.
Or was it 6?
Maybe not, actually. There was a film in my mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
Oh, my right? Counting's coming along well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, it was 7. It's 7 including the short film.
Yes. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, The Haunted Swordsman, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that was awesome. I love that film.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's one to rewatch, I think.
So a couple we'd already had a chance to see before the actual festival. But
that's true.
Candy Corn was the first film, which we didn't actually get to see on the big screen, but we had seen already. What's your thoughts on that one?
Candy Corn. Oh, it's terrible. It's it's kind of a modern day slasher movie, which is very Halloween-y in its look, and it's even got PJ Souls in it. As part of a kind of small scale local police station. And Courtney Gaines is the sheriff, who's good in other films, but it's just really quite dull.
And Tony Todd turns up. You forgot about Tony Todd.
Tony Todd's in it for a little bit longer than some other things. I just don't get it. I mean, there's no reason for it to be as boring as it is. And it really is quite dull, isn't it?
Yes. When I first heard about this film, I saw a really great sort of like retro 80s style poster, and I thought, that sold me already. But then they released another poster, which I'm guessing is the actual poster now, which is just one of those generic, 3 people standing in a line in front of a haunted attraction kind of thing. So, yeah, pretty much. Should have left it as the original poster. It would have sold people better on it. But
yeah,
I have heard it did go down reasonably well at the Fright Fest event.
Fair enough.
So each to their own.
Well, each to his own, yeah. And I was actually looking forward to it because I like horror films with a carnival setting. It's about a guy with a kind of carved pumpkin style mask that's on a rampage, and it's got a decent cast. But yeah, not a huge fan of.
I was a bit disappointed on it as well. I think I said to you was the trouble with it. I was watching it because the pacing so plodding through it. Yeah. When you like Courtney Gaines or PJ Souls, they turn up, you go, I could be watching Children of the Corn. I could be watching Halloween. I could be watching Candyman. But yeah,
it's a film so slow that at some point you think, this bit's actually in slow motion.
Yes, and then it actually is. There is actually slow motion bit, so isn't there? For no particular reason. It's just somebody slow motion making a sandwich. It's like watching somebody in Subways making a sandwich.
We think this film's too fast paced. Let's slow it down a little.
Yes, it's like a 1970s dance room. Let's slow it down.
Ladies' night. Yes, Candy Corn, not great, but other opinions are available, of course.
Yes. I believe the next one was We Summon the Darkness, which don't really remember anything of it at the top of my head at the moment. I do know it's done by the director of My Friend Dharma. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, My Friend Dharma is actually a really good movie and very different to We Summon the Darkness. It's pretty low-key account of Jeffrey Dahmer before the murders. Jeffrey Dahmer in high school kind of thing.
It just popped in my head. It was it. This is the film that's got Alexandra Daddario, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's actually quite fun. She's in it. Yeah. It's 3 girls are the leads, and they're all really good. They're the best thing about it. They're actually quite fun to watch, and it's written by the guy that did Burying the Ex, and it's set in the late '80s. So it's got Belinda Carlisle on the soundtrack and Tapao on the soundtrack.
Yeah,
which actually was probably the best thing about it. And I quite like the background of it. Is all about the kind of stuff that I've always been interested in, which is satanic panic in the 80s in America, especially where they thought rock music played backwards would summon Satan and that kind of stuff. And it plays with that, but somehow it's a bit disappointing in the end, maybe because it's got so much going for it in terms of the actors and stuff. It doesn't quite pan out, but it was still reasonably fun.
probably, if I had to pick 3 films, that was probably my top 3 for the event. But the next film was the one that I described to you as a lost episode of the TV series Are You Afraid of the Dark, which is done by the director of the American Werewolf in London documentary, Beware the Moon, remember American Werewolf in London. The director was Paul Davis. The film was Uncanny Annie, which, yeah, bit of a disappointment for me. What did you think of it?
Yeah, similarly, really. It seemed a bit kind of vulnerable on the big screen because it was made for Blumhouse's like Hulu TV series Into the Dark. Yeah. It's kind of a feature-length episode of that series. I really like Paul Davis's short film, which is the one with the guy that drags around a body on Halloween night and no one notices because it's Halloween night, called The Body.
I was about to say, isn't that just called The Body?
Yeah, and I promise that's the one. I don't know why it's called that. So I thought, and I really like Beware the Moon. He's a really nice guy. He's been to other Fright Fest events and stuff and comes across quite well. But this is a kind of film that actually made Annabelle Comes Home look quite exciting. It was really a sort of tame and, like you said, more along the lines of Goosebumps, that kind of stuff, than it was a real horror film. So maybe its audience is that, is the kind of 12 to 14 bracket or something like that. But it's a supernatural Jumanji, which is just a bit bland, nothing terrible, but already pretty much forgotten it, to be honest.
Yeah, which is probably what happened to a lot of this event, to be honest. But the next one, I think we both agreed on, was probably the best film of the night, which is the feature film directorial debut of Carlo Marabella Davis, which was Swallow, which is about a woman who's got pica, basically. That's basically the premise of the film, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's great, actually. Swallow is one of the best films I've seen this year. Really nicely made. A great performance by Haley Bennett as the lady with that condition. I always thought, when I was watching it, I thought this is the kind of performance that would probably get an Oscar nomination if it wasn't in a film that's not the kind of film they give Oscars to. It's kind of...
What would that be?
Yeah, it's not The English Patient. So yeah, I mean, it's great because it's cool because you think it's possibly going in the direction of uncomfortable body horror because she's swallowing all this dangerous stuff as part of her mental state fracturing. She's married into this awful wealthy family who are condescending to her, and she gets pregnant and everything's screwed up. But the cool thing is, which we don't really want to say too much about without giving it away, but it doesn't really go in the totally downbeat, horrific direction it seems to be going into. It turns into something else, which I thought was really impressive. I loved Swallow.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure where the short film fit in, but there was the short film, The Haunted Swordsman, which is done with puppets, kind of like The Dark Crystal, which I personally would like to see if it's done. Maybe it's a mini-series type thing, like a short 20-minute episode of each one, or maybe a feature-length thing. That was something I quite enjoyed. That was probably, along with We Summon the Darkness and Swallow, it's probably my top 3 of the night.
Yeah, Haunted Swordsman's great, and there's a lot of good short horror films around at the minute, and like the best of them, it leaves you wanting to watch a lot more, either of the actual story or of what the filmmaker's going to do next. So Haunted Swordsman, awesome, really nicely done.
And the next one was Trick, which is done by the director of My Bloody Valentine, the remake, and Drive Angry, which is Patrick Lucia.
Yes, Drive Angry. Drive Angry is also me on the A47 on a Monday morning. Another traffic jam.
Basically, it's a slasher film, which has a cult slasher thing towards the end. That's basically what the film is, isn't it? If you think about it.
Yeah,
it's not just one slasher killer. It's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
Which,
and that's that's kind of clear from the start, isn't it? It's got this kind of mad, hyperactive opening stretch. You can kind of see where it's going.
Yeah, that's what I said to you when we watched it. Is I know what's happening with this, and before we even watched the film, I said to you, Jamie Kennedy is going to be not doing a lot, but towards the end, he's going to be like a key focus And that's exactly
and
what
Jamie
happened.
Kennedy. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I was distracted because I was feeling a bit old, and I was thinking, oh well, Jamie Kennedy looks old, so at least that's something. Yeah, it's it is that. It was all right. It's another of those kind of things that you thought, well, this could be more fun, but somehow it's not actually that great. It's great to see Tom Atkins, who has, like in My Bloody Valentine, has quite a nice role in it.
Yeah.
And Omar Epps is the hero, who's kind of got a lot of secondhand Dr. Loomis style dialogue.
Yes.
And it's got a Halloween setting, which isn't maybe not used as best it could have been, or it's set over various Halloweens, really. And a lot of kind of brutal killings with shaky camera work. So if that's your bag, trick might be up your street.
I've never really been a fan of the whole shaky camera trick. It wears thin after a while. Especially, nearly 20 years later after, Blair Witch Project, but you think of all the films that's happened in between there with the shaky camera trick.
That's right. Yeah, it's I get it. I mean, I get that it's meant to bring a sense of kind of out of control, stuff's happening. Yeah. Oh, it's mental. But when you just can't see what's going on, it's a bit pointless, especially in things you want to see really carefully, like killings or car chase movies, that kind of stuff, action scenes. What's the point if the camera's? It's the same with the mad editing, isn't it? The editing that's so quick, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh, and I think the last film was the anthology film, which was Scare Package.
Yes.
Which I can't remember anything about it off the top of my head. Was that the meta horror film?
Yes, it sure was. The one partly set at a video shop.
That's the one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I really liked Scare Package.
Yeah, it had some good stories in it, and I think for me it was the wraparound story I enjoyed the most out of it. The interaction between the guy who wanted to work for the video shop and the guy who's now working in the video shop, and the drama between them, making sure he had to put on the right videotapes and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that stuff was cool. And some of although it's kind of old hat now, some of the meta jokes were quite good. At times it was a bit like Tucker and Dale. At times it was a bit like Cabin in the Woods. There's some Monty Python style gore in it. There's a really good episode by Emily Higgins, who's the filmmaker that first started directing zombie films when she was like not even a teenager. And it's good fun. It's not like a classic or anything, but it's one of the better horror anthologies that we've seen recently.
Yes, so probably out of all those, there's probably two on there I probably wouldn't watch again.
Yeah, Swallow, Scare Package, Haunted Swordsman as well. Really good.
Yeah. But other than that, the only other stuff I've been watching recently is a couple of things you've actually reviewed for the site recently, which was what was it called? The Surreal Project by Joseph Galai, I presume that's how you pronounce his name, which is a Hungarian found footage film about a guy who goes to pick up a painting from his grandmother's, and potentially this painting may have killed members of his family, and he's documenting it. It's the same sort of stuff that he's done before with Spirits of the Dead and Moth. I think his style is the found footage style. I think that's what he seems to be sticking with. I would like to see him branch out, because Moth I really enjoyed. Spirits of the Dead was lackluster. This was a bit better. This was a bit better than that, but before we even recorded, I couldn't even remember what the title of this film was called. I only watched it last night.
It wasn't great. It's got a sense of humor which I thought made it a bit less boring than Spirits of the Dead. There's some jokes. There's like references to the Warrens, and there's a joke about the Justice League moustache, Henry Cavill's moustache. And the characters are okay. They're not as obnoxious as a lot of found footage characters. But the film is still just a bloke wandering around in very dark rooms, and very occasionally something pops out to startle him, and not much else happens except a bunch of screaming at the end. So we've seen it before, maybe slightly more memorably.
And the other thing was Derailed, which was the creature feature film with Lance Henriksen, who, well, I say Lance Henriksen, he's in it for maybe 30 seconds at the beginning of the film and maybe 2 at the end of the film. But it's that one where a bunch of people go on a murder mystery train, and then the train derails, and then there's a monster chasing after them. That's basically the idea of the film. I quite enjoyed it. It's definitely something you'd probably see on the Sci-Fi Channel somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I quite liked it too. It's not great, but it's got a nice build up where it reminded me of the kind of 70s disaster movies that I really liked, because it's got a mixture of characters like a bastard industrialist and a waitress and a wannabe starlet, a guy with a twirly moustache. And it's got a cool monster. So it was somewhere between a 70s disaster movie and a kind of 1980s Roger Corman flick, or like you said, a Sci-Fi Channel thing. I wish it had more monster action, essentially.
Yeah, the monster's pretty cool because it's I'll say it's a man in a suit, could be a woman in a suit. Basically, it's a person in a suit. Yeah. And the creature kind of reminded me of a mixture of the host creature in the X-Files episode, The Host. Yeah, the
Fluke Man.
The Fluke Man, yeah. And I don't know if you've ever seen any clips of Resident Evil games. There's a character in it called the Licker. It's kind of a mashup of those two characters. But it was a cool looking character, and there's a great scene with all the characters that get swallowed up by it.
Yeah, and there's ultimately not enough monster in it, a man in a suit or woman in a suit monster movies these days. At some point, it became the thing where almost every monster in a low budget film was at least partly CGI. So hats off to it for doing something of the kind that I used to love growing up, Creature from the Black Lagoon kind of stuff, which was always impressive with the monster suits and stuff.
But yeah, out of those two, Derailed I'll definitely watch again.
Yeah.
Surreal Project, as much as I've enjoyed Moth, and I do like the director's style, what he's trying to go for, I do wish he'd branch out in a different subgenre of the horror, as opposed to sticking with basically what he knows.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially right now, where the found footage thing, you really have to stand out if you're going to do a found footage movie. Otherwise, you get lost in the dozens of interchangeable ones, as we proved by forgetting almost everything about it.
Yeah, so it's everybody's got their own different things that they like. I like occasional found footage films. There's some really good ones out there, but then there's so many out there that just gets put out, and then, like you said, you just instantly forget them.
Yeah,
because they're basically carbon copies of each other after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know if it's the most populated subgenre of horror, but it's got to be up there, right? Especially in the last, since Paranormal Activity, I guess, and before that, Blair Witch.
Yeah, probably in the top 5 subgenres of horror, I would have thought.
Yeah.
But what have you been watching recently?
Well, as well as the above, the biggest thing I suppose I've seen recently was Doctor Sleep, which is, as everybody probably knows, is Mike Flanagan's sequel to The Shining, or adaptation of Stephen King's sequel to The Shining. I really like Doctor Sleep. It's not done very well at the old box office, but it's had some really good reviews, and it does deserve them. Almost everything that Mike Flanagan does is really good. So on TV, he did The Haunting of Hill House for Netflix.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Which was great. And to be honest with you, if you like The Haunting of Hill House, there's a good chance you'll like this, because it's the same kind of character-driven horror. It's not about jump scares, although, of course, in Haunting of Hill House there's at least one amazing jump scare. But Doctor Sleep is similar. It's deliberately paced. It's not in a rush. It's got some really good characters, and it's driven by them and by the story. And it does quite a cool thing, which is it has the difficult juggling act of being a sequel to the film of The Shining. Yeah. And also the sequel to the book of The Shining. And of course, the book and the film are quite different. They have different endings. The hotel blows up in the book, and it does that quite well. It's got some amazing recreations of the Overlook Hotel. It's got a couple of surprises that I won't give away here. And it's just a quite good story. It also does something very different. So you think it starts off, it's a direct sequel. Here's Danny after the event, and here's Danny grown up. He's an alcoholic and haunted by the events he went through. But then it branches off into something else with the new set of villains, who are basically a kind of cult that feed on the shine that Danny has, and a few people around the country have. It's a good adaptation of the book Doctor Sleep, which I thought was quite a tricky book to bring to the screen, and it manages that difficult thing of being a new film, a sequel to the old one, but also faithfully staying true to the Stephen King stuff, which it all comes from. Yeah, it's really good. I like Doctor Sleep.
Yeah, and anything else you've watched recently?
A shout out to The Little Stranger, which is a cool little ghost story set in a British country house with Domhnall Gleeson. Very quiet. Again, no real jump scares, that kind of stuff, but very creepy if you're in the mood for something that's a little bit slow but really carefully made. And Little Monsters, which is I guess it's an Australian production starring Lupita Nyong'o from Us, set in basically a kindergarten where they go to a petting zoo just as there's a zombie apocalypse. Now, this film has had some really good reviews. It's kind of snuck out onto Sky TV. I think it's gone straight to
Sky Cinema. I think it went
Sky
to
Cinema.
Yeah, I think it did have the same day that it came out, well, at least in the UK anyway. It went out at Sky Cinema and it had a brief run in the cinema, maybe for a week, if that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's one of those kind of. It looks like it was fairly not a big budget, but it looks like it was not a cheap movie. So I presume they were intending a big theatrical release, and it just went by the wayside and just had this kind of token release. To be honest with this one I thought started off really well because it's got this kind of schlubby, nasty main character who is amusingly horrible, and he's rubbish and he's got no sense of responsibility. He's just been dumped by his girlfriend. He tags along to his nephew's school because he really fancies the teacher. And there's a really great early gag where basically he's awkwardly masturbating to a picture of her, but because it's a class photo, he's trying to cover out the images of the children while he's looking at her on the end of the picture. So he's a total tosser. But unfortunately, the film decides that it's going to be one of those stories where, like in Groundhog Day or anything like that, like Scrooge, he's going to be redeemed as the film goes on, and he becomes a totally different character. It also, for a film that's got zombies in a kindergarten, you'd expect it to kind of go down a very bad taste line, but it's too nice to do that. So you end up with a film that you sort of think is going to be that, but it doesn't quite become that. And it's somewhere in between. It's too gory for children to watch, and it's too nice for gore fans to enjoy where you think it might go. It's not terrible. It's got some laughs, but it probably should have done a bit more than that, especially when there's so many zombie films around.
Yes, but I will eventually get around to it. I said to you, I wasn't particularly excited by the looks of the trailer and everything, but I reckon it's just because we got zombied out. There's too many zombie films out there. Yeah,
absolutely. I suppose the one thing this has got, which may be a gimmick for it and was sort of fun for a while, is it's got Olaf from Frozen. Not the actual snowman, but the guy that does the voice, plays this kind of sleazy, horrible, foul-mouthed children's entertainer. So for that gimmick alone, I suppose it's probably going to attract some attention. And he's quite funny, although it's the kind of character we've seen before in this kind of horror comedy situation.
Well, I said about the zombie film being zombied out. I mean, every now and again, a really good zombie film does come out, like The Battery or something like that comes out. But pretty much they're all following the same sort of premise, aren't they? Oh, virus, off you go.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang.
I think that's it.
But yeah, I can't really think of any off the top of my head at the moment. Maybe a couple of short films that I've really enjoyed that got zombies in it.
Yeah.
I can't think of any like big films that's come out recently, because you've had like Zombieland 2 and then of course Little Monsters.
Sure.
But no. Can you think of any?
I don't know how recent it is now. Maybe it was 2 years ago. But the one I really liked was It Stains the Sands Red. That was really good.
That's probably good, yeah.
I suppose that's an example of where they actually found a sort of a fresh take on something that we've seen before. The one where this woman sort of becomes unlikely partners in survival with a zombie that's sort of not quite domesticated like Bub, but he's possibly getting in that direction. And it went in surprising ways, so that was quite a cool one. But you do have to look for the gems, because you do get a lot of things like Little Monsters, which are okay, but you've already kind of forgotten about them a week later.
Was it Cargo with Martin Freeman? That's got zombies in it, hasn't it?
Yeah, Cargo's really good. Yeah, which was based on the short film, I think, of the same name.
Yeah, same. I think it's the same. Might be the same director. Could be wrong, but
I think so. Yeah, they expanded it from the short. Cargo's, again, it's quite a relatively original take on the themes that we see a lot. Yeah, they're out there. You just got to look for them.
Oh yes, but we are now going to be jumping. Actually, before we jump into the main. One of our main topics, as Stephen mentioned, The Haunting of Hill House. As if you listen to the first episode of this, we would have mentioned that you could have won the TV series and the book of the same name, our latest competition. But we are going to expand it, or extend the competition, should I say. So the next episode is the 27th of December, so you've now got until then to get your entries in to be able to win it. So might be a good Christmas gift or an after Christmas gift if you know somebody who's into it. So just drop us some feedback about the podcast, things you like, things you don't like. You can't say you don't like both of us, because that'd be a bit difficult to do the podcast otherwise. But yeah, so one of our main topics of today's is the 1971 film Dracula vs. Frankenstein by Al Edmondson, which there's a documentary coming out soon which is called Blood and Flesh, The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Edmondson, which is done by the makers of the 2014 documentary Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, which is possibly the longest title for anything, and the 2019 documentary Master of Dark Shadows, which is about the Gothic drama series Dark Shadows. So check that out as soon as it comes out. I'm not entirely sure when it's coming out, probably sometime next year, but I believe it's Severin Films that's releasing it somewhere online. But I believe the documentary briefly talks about his career, but mostly it's about how he came and his strange circumstances around his death. But before all this happened, we had Dracula versus Frankenstein in 1971, which has possibly the weirdest sort of title on its poster, which was "The Kings of Horror battle to the death. Together in one film, they meet in a fight of fright." Which I imagine that would pull people into the cinema. But and the director before this did Satan Sadists in 1969, and probably his other reasonably well-known film was Nurse Sherry in 1978. Have you seen either of those?
I've not seen either of those. A long time ago, I saw Brain of Blood, which I think I saw under the title Man with a Synthetic Brain. That was a long time ago, though, and I have shamefully not seen a lot of his other films.
Well, this film, Dracula vs. Frankenstein, was originally intended to be a sequel to Satan Sadists, which is why you get a couple of characters that randomly turn up and you're like, hang on a minute, aren't you supposed to be? So that's what this film was supposed to be. But after a lot of rewrites and reshoots and editing and recasting and whatever else, we ended up with Dracula vs. Frankenstein, which is possibly the most mental film of the 70s.
It's absolutely crackers, isn't it?
Yeah, and
but in a good way.
Yeah, as I say, it is in a good way. There is a couple of scenes in it which make me chuckle, which we'll talk about in a minute. But should we tell people who's in the film? There's a couple of big names. There's reasonably big names, and other names people might just. Yeah. Okay, so I will start off with the guy who was Count Dracula. He's not a big name, but I don't think this is his real name. I think this is a pseudonym. His name was Zandor Vorkov.
That's his birth name, I told you.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. as Count Dracula, whose face is painted up like he's going to attend a Kiss or black metal concert. When he talks,
Yes.
it sounds echoey, making it seem like he's talking in a cave all the time.
Echo chamber.
Yep, but
He's great. He looks like Mike Raven from the Hammer films had sex with Frank Zappa, and that was the result.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny to watch because you can kind of see where they've had to reshoot some stuff or add bits in, because you look at his makeup, it's quite patchy white and black, like I mentioned, like he's going to a black metal concert, and then towards the end of the film, it's full on. I'm getting ready to go to the concert.
He's great, isn't he? He's actually really fun. And he's in, I haven't seen it, but he's in Brain of Blood as well. Zandor. It's an amazing cast.
The guy who was playing the Frankenstein monster was John Bloom, who starred in the incredible Two-Headed Transplant, also in 1971. You seen that one? No?
No, I haven't seen that one.
He stood at over 7 foot tall, so you can definitely see why he got picked to be the Frankenstein's monster, even though the monster makeup for him does look like a bowl of mashed potato.
He's great, isn't he? Yeah, absolutely. John Bloom.
But yeah, and Al Adamson's actual real-life wife, Regina Carroll, stars as the buxom blonde Las Vegas singer Judith Fontaine, who's looking for her sister.
I like the musical number that she gets, which goes on for about half an hour.
With her two, I can't remember what the two guys were called.
Well, it's Judith and the Show-Offs, I think.
Yeah,
Judith Fontaine and the Show-Offs.
Yeah,
which sums it up. She's big on knee-high boots and cleavage, and it's like this weird cabaret act from the dark side of the 50s.
Yeah, they're talking about going somewhere, and that her suitcases are full of pretty much useless stuff, like she's bought a telephone for no particular reason. Can't use it. We're talking years before mobile phones, so why she's bringing a home phone with her, we will never know. For
the future.
Possibly. And a couple of the actual real sort of like guest big names in the film is famous sci-fi writer and all-round horror sci-fi fantasy expert Forrest J. Ackerman appears as Dr. Beaumont, who's a man with a dark past, with Dr. Dre, who's played by J. Carrol Naish.
Yeah. In his last film, along with
Lon Chaney Jr.
In his last film, which
yes.
is and interesting. What I think is really cool. It's an amazing cast, actually. The fact that Al got all these people together says a lot, really, about his ability to get stuff done. But they were both together in a film which must have been a huge influence on this. J. Carrol Naish and Lon Chaney are both in House of Frankenstein, which is one of the kind of late period Universal horror movies.
Yeah, 1941, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of the last ones where they were like, bollocks, we're running out of ideas. Let's put them all in one film.
Yes.
And
it clearly shows.
It kind of does. And this has the same approach. It's like, let's put them out. Dracula, Mad Midget. Yeah, let's shove them all in. And it's in the spirit of the Universal films, and the fact that they got two old hands, even though it's quite sad, especially for Lon, who clearly was very ill. Yeah. It's still great to see them. And they obviously needed work, so everyone wins, sort of.
J. Carrol Naish is the Dr. Dre character, who we later find out is actually somebody else, which we'll tell you about soon. But you're watching the film, and he's clearly reading from cue cards as he's doing his scenes. He's possibly got the most dialogue in the whole film.
But he's talking all the time. He can't stop talking.
And you can see that he's got one glass eye, so he's got one real eye, and you can see the real eyes constantly scanning across the cue cards if you look carefully.
Yeah.
I don't know what the print was like that you watched, but the print that I was watching, you could see his eyes scanning across the cue cards, which is quite entertaining. And then, of course, Lon Chaney Jr. has no dialogue whatsoever, but this is because he had lung cancer.
Yeah, so he was at the end of his rope. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. He's just grunting and sweating and grinning. He's a kind of, I suppose, an extension of... He's somewhere in between the character he plays in Of Mice and Men and Igor, really, isn't he? He's that kind of character.
It's the assistant. Groton?
Groton. Just a great name.
Or Crouton, whatever it is.
Crouton.
Yeah, Crouton.
And he has a puppy.
Yes.
and and he's injected with this stuff, and then he becomes a kind of Mr. Hyde figure, chopping off pretty girls' heads on the beach under the pier.
That just goes to show how mental this film is, because that's basically 4 storylines we've chucked in there so far already. And I can't remember his name at the moment, but the small guy that's in the film played the half of Master Blaster in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah, that guy's amazing, Angelo Rosito. Right, his career, I started looking at his career, and it's astonishing. He's in the original Todd Browning's Freaks, and like you said, his career continued into the 80s with stuff like Something Wicked This Way Comes, Beyond Thunderdome, From a Whisper to a Scream. And interestingly, he was in the cast of a silent film with Lon Chaney Sr. called While the City Sleeps back in the 20s. So this guy was working from 20s Hollywood to, well, I think he died in the early 90s. So an amazing career, and sandwiched in the middle is this batshit mad film with Al. And he's fun. These guys, these actors are all quite fun to watch in this. So I like to think they all had a really good time.
They're all definitely going for it. They're all definitely enjoying their time doing it.
Absolutely. I like that Forrest J. Ackerman is listed as, I think it's technical consultant, which I presume meant at one stage in the making of it, they went, what do you think of this monster maker? Oh, yeah, it's all right. Excellent.
Well, yeah, mashed potato. That's what we're going to use for Frankenstein's face.
Yeah. Sign off. Oh, yeah, no way. Yeah, so it's just amazing. Russ Tamblyn is in it as well. Russ Tamblin's career is amazing. Like, he was a big figure in Hollywood musicals. He plays Rico in this. And he was in stuff like West Side Story and Seven Brides for Sale. He was in The Haunting, the original Haunting as well.
Yeah. He's also in the Satan Sadist, which I mentioned earlier, which is why he's playing the same character at the beginning of, because his character only appears every now and again, but that's because this was originally intended as a semi-sequel to that film before Dracula, Frankenstein, and possibly everything else got chucked into it. So you have Rico randomly turn up, you're like, what are you in this for? Oh, okay. Doesn't make a lot of sense while you're here, but okay.
While you're here, it's fabulous. I think the charm of it is that it's just this mashup, like you said, of what might have been a sequel to an earlier film, mixed with the monster movie rallies that used to be hugely popular in the 40s, mixed with this weird random stuff like when Judith gets drugged and has a bad trip. This weird 40s monsters in a 70s scenario thing, and there's the love interest with Mike, which means romantic walks on the beach and these kind of John Denver style ballads on the soundtrack. So yeah, it's totally mad.
So shall we tell people basically what happens? We won't go step by step, but we'll just try and chuck in what we remember from the film, because if you haven't watched this film, there's a hell of a lot trying to remember, and not in a wow, it's so technically written, and wow, just I can't remember much. It's hardly I don't know. Can't think of anything. I don't know. One Flew in a Cuckoo's Nest. It's not that kind of thing. But,
not quite.
No, but it's got so much going on that even if you watched it, you're like, what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah, and again, that's part of it. The fun of it is that it's all this stuff mixed in. And it's summed up by the start, because the start's actually quite cool. It starts off as a kind of nod to the opening of things like the original Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, because it's grave robbing, it's that cemetery kind of atmosphere, and then it cuts to an axe murder, and it's got Volkov turning up with his camp goatee and echo chamber voice, and they're stealing. Well, they start off by they get the original Frankenstein monster from the cemetery, don't they?
Yeah, it starts off with them opening up on Oakmore Cemetery. Sinister goings on in the cemetery. You see, Xander Volkov. Somehow he knows the exact location of Frankenstein, has spent 40 years trying to find him.
Google Maps. Yeah,
knew exactly where it was. And I don't know how the people who buried him didn't go, what the hell is this we're burying? Because it's basically, they comes across it, and then, like you said, the caretaker comes along. He gets bitten on the neck, and then you get the axe murder happens. And then I think he jumps into Judith and her show-off. Doing their great cabaret show in the Las Vegas Strip.
And then it becomes Psycho, doesn't it? Because then it becomes the kind of procedural thing of this woman searching for her sister. And and getting no help whatsoever from the police who just remind her like how many rapists and white slavery operators there are in town.
It goes. She goes to her. I've got the telegram about possibly finding my missing sister. Oh, basically he goes. Yeah, you don't want to go there. There's rapists and there's murderers and there's druggies, and so we're not going to do our job. You go do it, but we wouldn't suggest you doing it, but we're going to say you should do it.
So she does.
Yeah. And then the detective complains every time she does it.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I love the police in this film. And then it's this which I always liked in horror movies. Then it's this kind of carnival stuff, isn't it? The midget Barker of the kind of horror museum thing where
the Creature Emporium was what it was called.
Yeah, which is where old J. Carroll Naish is lurking and rambling about Romans. And so there's
illusions. Don't forget his illusions.
Absolutely brilliant. And in between all of this, as we said, Chaney Jr., Lon is, or what's his name? Groton. He's off out and about with his axe, kind of spying on necking couples under the pier and chopping off people's heads.
It's a bit about that. I was like, why is he doing that? Why is he chopping off their head and then bringing back the head and the body? Why didn't he kidnap the person and then do whatever they got to do in the laboratory? Seems a bit, yeah. Is it to make things lighter, chopping off their head? Because now he's got to make 2 trips.
Oh, he's not thought this through at all. This is rough. And then I like the fact, because the film seems to trundle along for ages, and then you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure. And then eventually Dracula sort of shows up and starts to try and explain the plot, like a kind of Basil exposition character, talking about what they're planning. And he's kind of planning to create ultimately take over the world, isn't he? He wants to like have an evil league of vampires.
Yeah, pretty much. So he found where the Frankenstein's monster was. He goes to Dr. Dre, who we soon find out is actually a relative of the Dr. Frankenstein.
No.
Yeah, we didn't know that was going to happen. So to make a deal, because Dr. Dre's career was ruined by Dr. Beaumont, which was played by Forrest J. Ackerman.
Yeah, sorry.
So Dracula says, so if you bring Frankenstein back to life, I will get lots of power and I can have my League of Vampires and you can have your revenge on Dr. Beaumont. Yeah. So that's the basic idea as to why Dracula is doing what he did. To be honest, he didn't really need him.
Ultimately, no.
Yeah, we also forgot that Dracula has a really cool Death Ray ring.
Oh, his ring is amazing. His ring gets its own credit at the start. His ring's awesome. I really want one.
You want Dracula's ring?
So to speak.
Okay.
It's just a personal thing.
But that's because there's a bit. So you have this bit. Dracula and Dr. Dre meet up. Judith's still looking for her sister. She finds out her sister's actually had her head lobbed off, and she's down in Dr. Dre's laboratory. Groton's still going around trying to chop up girls, even though he doesn't really need to anymore. What's Dracula doing at this time? Actually, I think Dracula disappears for quite a while, doesn't he?
He's off. Yeah, he
randomly turns up in Dr. Beaumont's car a bit later on in the film. Forrest Ackerman selling was great. It was what are you doing in here?
God blimey.
How did you get in here? I'm a vampire.
He's got a great evil laugh, hasn't he? He's got the fantastic stare. He calls himself the Lord of the Manor of Carpathia, the Count of Darkness, to big himself up. He's just
you know me, yeah.
Yeah, it's me.
But all this is going on. Frankenstein's monster is still trundling along, killing people. I think killing mainly cops. That's what it really seems to be doing. Yeah. So you've got Dracula going around doing stuff. You've got Groton going around doing stuff. You have Frankenstein's monster going around stuff. Dr. Dre. You have Judith and Mike doing their own thing. You also have the biker group going around. You have the hippies going around. The drug people in the cafe doing stuff. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in this film.
There's random scenes of surfers and protesters, which is just there because presumably they're while we're here,
Oh, yeah, there's a bit in it where Mike and his, I guess his girlfriend says something like, "Hey, we're going to the protest. What are we protesting? I don't know, but it's going to be really cool, whatever it is."
Hey, man. It's brilliant, and I think that's part of the fun. All the location stuff in Vegas and stuff is just awesome, because this is a particular period of time that we weren't around to see, and we get to see it through this mad film, and its regular detours.
So after a while, Judith obviously mentioned she finds where her location of her sister is. Dr. Ray's now got his vengeance on Dr. Beaumont, and Judith gets hypnotized, I believe, by Dracula, taken to a building somewhere where she gets tied up very, very loosely. She could have quite easily escaped. But while this is going on, Mike gets a flare from the cop car that he stole earlier in the film, because we haven't got enough going on already. So he shoves the flare in front of Frankenstein monster's face. Frankenstein's monster turns around, attacks Dracula. Dracula tells Frankenstein's monster that's not what's going to happen. So he attacks Mike again. Mike rescues Judith, but when he escapes, because this is the bit I read up about, Mike escapes, and the reason he gets blasted away by Dracula's death ray ring is because they couldn't afford to get the actor to come back to do any more scenes after they basically killed him off.
Fair enough.
with Dracula's funky death ray ring, which only gets used about twice in this film, I think.
But it's great.
But yeah, and then Judith again faints, because why not? She gets kidnapped again by Dracula. Frankenstein's monster falls in love with Judith, or at least gets a little bit gooey about her. And so Dracula and Frankenstein's monster have a fight, which ends up outside. Frankenstein's monster, I believe, knocks off the death ray ring. They go outside, have a fight, which then ends up a bit like Monty Python's scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail 1975, where you have the Arthur, King of the Britons, fighting against the Black Knight, and Dracula rips off Frankenstein's monster's arms, and all you really needed is the Frankenstein to suddenly just go, "It's only a flesh wound."
It's not far off.
Yeah, it's basically that. It's basically, I wouldn't be surprised if Terry Gilliam and all that seen this film a couple of years earlier and went, I'm going to use that later on somewhere along the line. It's basically that whole scene is just the Monty Python, the Black Knight.
Yeah,
scene.
yeah.
Oh, and he rips off Frankenstein's monster's head as well. So you have that, and then towards the end of the film, Frankenstein realizes he's too far in the woods, even though he only really walked a couple of meters. Takes him forever to get back to the place where he's trying to escape from the sun. He turns into a pile of dust, I guess.
Yeah.
His death ray ring, his cape, and everything is outside, where Judith is now out safe and sound, picks up the ring, has some kind of, I don't know, it's supposed to be a flashback thing, or maybe the power of the ring is showing her what potentially could happen, and it just randomly just goes, the end. That's all you're going to get. We've run out of ideas. We can't think of anything else. It's completely mental.
It is. It's really lovely, isn't it? And I like the decomposition of old Dracula at the end is very much like the Hammer one, isn't it? It's kind of like a not quite as good version of that. So I think
we'll keep cutting away.
Yeah, I think they were obviously fans, or they wanted to do something that was in the spirit of those old Dracula and Frankenstein movies. For some reason, in the early 70s, when everyone else was watching The Exorcist or Romero films, so it's a strange mixture of stuff, but it's really fun.
Did I miss anything in the?
I think that's it.
I think I pretty much covered the film in.
Yeah.
Completely bonkers anyway.
It's totally mad. It keeps going off on tangents. It does all sort of make some kind of random sense in the end.
Yeah, that's the thing is, though, because it's a whole load of different ideas chucked into one film, which is clearly they're going to be used for different films, but it chucked it all into one thing. It does actually make some kind of sense.
Yeah.
In its own bizarreness.
And it's probably it's probably a lot more entertaining than a lot of the more so-called respectable Dracula or Frankenstein movies out there. It's got a lot of spirit, and it's great to watch a lot of these actors in this kind of thing. And it's just very, very 70s, which of course we always like.
Yes.
It's so 70s.
Did you have you seen how many different titles this has gone under?
Well, I have. I remember the only time I've ever watched it was on a video in the UK where it was called Revenge of Dracula, but I believe it was called Blood of Frankenstein over here when it came out in the cinema. Which is confusing because, of course, there's a film called Blood of Dracula, and Revenge of Dracula, I'm sure, has been used somewhere else before, at least 10 times. It's
also known as Teenage Dracula. I don't know why.
Which makes a lot of sense because he's about 53.
Yep, and they're coming to get you. I wonder what they're cashing in on there. I don't know.
Was it also called Dracula versus the Exorcist?
I would not be surprised if it had those other titles. But this, I was doing my research on this film and discovered that there's actually 2 other films that came out basically around the same time as this film. One's by Jesus Franco, Jeff Franco, which was called Dracula versus Frankenstein. I haven't seen that one. And the other one is another film called Dracula vs. Frankenstein, which has Paul Naschy in it. I'm guessing he's either playing Dracula or Frankenstein. I don't know. But be interested to see what they're like. So basically, you had all the universal Frankenstein, Dracula films that you mentioned, House of Frankenstein and all that, which really is the Wolfman taking on everybody. And then you have nearly 40 years later, you get Dracula versus Frankenstein. This is what you get for that final payoff of 2 big horror icons fighting together in a 2-minute battle, which Frankenstein does absolutely nothing in. Gets his head ripped off and his arms ripped off.
That's worth the wait.
But I don't think there hasn't really been any films that I can think of that's had. I guess Van Helsing. Van Helsing has Dracula versus Frankenstein in it, I think.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've seen that, so might be wrong on that one. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head that had those 2 fighting against each other.
It's strange because you'd think maybe, I suppose Van Helsing was as close as they got, but you'd think maybe they would do something like that, some kind of mash-up, because things like Freddy versus Jason and Alien versus Predator did quite well.
Yeah.
So there was a kind of a hunger for that kind of, the only thing better than one franchise is having at least 2 in one.
Yeah, but
let's rope Jeff in and everybody else in. Yeah, so you'd think, I would imagine we'll obviously see more Frankenstein and Dracula movies along the way, but I'd imagine at some point somebody will do something similar, even if it is a Van Helsing style CGI fest.
Yeah, well, we shall see.
Cool.
But for me, I think you said you've only seen it once before on the videotape, which was years ago.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've watched it in maybe 5+ years, and it's one of them films where I'm watching it and I'm remembering it as I'm going along, and you're laughing as you're going along because you're like, I know what's going to happen. It's completely bonkers. I'm just imagining somebody else watching it, thinking, what the hell is going on? Don't tell them anything about the film. Just say, do you want to watch a film called Dracula versus Frankenstein?
And who would say no to that?
Yeah, so it's sold by the title already. Put it on and don't say anything about the film. And just leave it, and then wait for the film to end and then ask them what they thought. Be interesting. But the print that I watched was reasonably dark in places.
Yeah.
So I would like to see it possibly lit up a bit more so you can see things. But
yeah, I think that I'm sure it will. Maybe the documentary will help actually and get him known again. But I think it warrants a decent release, and probably will get one. It's I'm sure there was a laserdisc of it at some stage. It's done the rounds, as you said, under about 500 different titles.
Yes.
So that complicates it. And who knows? I presume it's in public domain. I don't know. I don't know like exactly who owns it.
I have no idea, to be honest.
But it's really important. It's an important film because it's in terms of the cast that you'll never see together in the same place. And it being the milestone of being Lon Chaney's last film and Jay Cowernesh's as well. Yeah, it's a once in a lifetime mashup of everything.
Would you say that now you've seen this film, would you go, now I need to go watch some more Al Edmondson films?
Actually, to be honest, yes, because it was much more entertaining than I imagined, and I love the 70s stuff of this nature, just like I like the Herschel Gordon Lewis things, because everything's so sunny in Florida and all this weird hacking up is going on. Yeah, definitely. I never saw Nurse Sherry. That was always one I meant to watch, and the same is true of Satan Sadists. So yeah, count me in. I would be up for more Al.
Well, I've got a fair few of his films because I like that kind of exploitation kind of thing that was going on back then. Cheap films which chucks absolutely anything into it.
Yeah.
Probably the trouble is a lot of films now, they try and do that idea, but they're clearly thinking about it when they're doing it.
Yeah.
So they're taking, we are going to put Dracula in it. We are going to put Frankenstein and this biker film in it, but you can tell that's what they're trying to go for, as a whole mashup kind of thing.
Sure.
It doesn't work. Whereas this film, it's because it got chopped up to pieces so many times. You end up with this completely bonkers film, which I'd be very hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't like it. Because it's just mental.
I think that's it. I think it's really likable, and it's never boring. So it's done its job. And I presume they weren't taking it that seriously while they were making it.
Well, I don't know. We can guess. I don't think we won't be able to ask Al Edmondson or Sam Sherman any of this. I can't see there being a documentary about this film.
Well, and that's the sad thing, because even the people that were quite young in this, like Regina, they're all dead, aren't they? Essentially.
Yeah.
I think Russ Tamblin's still around. Maybe I think he was in the reboot of Twin Peaks. He was a big character in that, wasn't he? But otherwise, there's very few people to tell the tale.
No, but it would have been interesting to find out the whole story about how everything came along. Hey. We have this film to remember it by.
Oh, fantastic.
So, I would definitely say go check it out. And, Stephen, as you want to watch some more of Al Edmondson's films, I will have a dig out of my collection. I shall find out some for you to enjoy.
I would love to, yeah.
I say enjoy. It depends.
Enjoy.
But yeah,
I think so.
I definitely want to check out that documentary, which is called The Blood and Flesh, The Real Life and Ghastly Death of Al Edmondson. This director makes these documentaries, really likes really long titles, doesn't he? But yeah, so the next topic of discussion will be the Christmas movies. But before that, we shall talk about, I'll give a brief mention to the Horror on Sea Film Festival that's happening in January of 2020 in the Southend-on-Sea, which is 2 weekends full of horror. It's 36 feature-length movies, 62 short films with many of the filmmakers and probably the cast in attendance. The dates are the 10th of January to the 12th of January. And the 17th of January to the 19th of January. More details on the festival, as well as how to get tickets, can be found on the festival's website at www.horroronsea.com. There is quite a few. There's been a few that we've already watched. And one of the films that's showing is actually a short film that you liked, which was Boo, which is Raffiket Abigail.
Oh, yeah.
Which you like. You like that. And Drell's showing there as well. And then, of course, there's Michael Faust's, I think it's his feature-length film, Exit, showing there. You've liked his short films. And
yes.
MJ Dixon's latest film, which enters his, I don't know what they call it, slasher universe thing with Slasher House and Cleaver and all that in it. That's Pandemonium. That's supposed to be showing there as well. But there's loads of stuff that's showing, so check out that if you want to go see some horror films. Definitely something to treat yourself to after the Christmas holidays.
Ooh,
which talking of Christmas holidays, we're now going to jump into Christmas horror movies.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's Christmas again.
Yeah, it's come round again.
Oh,
that time of year.
Yeah.
That time of year where you start looking at your shelves and going, what shall I watch for my Christmas horror movies?
Oh.
So, for me, which coincidentally, in December, 88 Films are releasing this on Blu-ray release, which is one of my favourite Christmas horror movies. Is Christmas Evil from 1980. Seen it for the first time on VHS years ago, but it stuck with me. I just seem to enjoy it. So I always think blood and snow mixed together so well. The whole idea of that.
Yeah.
And you've seen this film. I think you probably reviewed it somewhere on the line.
Yeah, probably.
Better Watch Out. That's the other title, wasn't it?
Yeah. Christmas. They're both great titles. Christmas Evil is probably my favorite title for this movie. It's a great one, isn't it? And it's probably the best of the kind of slasher era Christmas movies, and it's much more thoughtful and interesting than some of the other ones that came out. And it's just got a great main character.
Yes, which
yeah,
I even we're talking about it now. I kind of feel, I want to watch it again now, but I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until the '88 Blu-ray comes out and watch it on that, because I'm sure they're gonna have some reasonably good extras on it. And another slasher film, which is from the same decade, was Don't Open Till Christmas, which has Carolyn Monroe in it.
Yeah,
which I think she's doing a very brief song. I can't remember what the song's called, but she's singing in it very briefly.
Yeah,
that's another entertaining film if you like slasher films. It's very British.
Oh, that's why it stands out, isn't it? Because there weren't many British slasher movies, full stop, and there certainly wasn't any other significant British Christmas slasher films. And it is very British. It's even got a kind of sleazy Page 3 style photographer guy as one of the characters. Everybody's a total bastard, and somebody's going around castrating people dressed as Santa at the urinals. It's I like Don't Open Till Christmas very much.
Any that spring to mind? Because we've got our own top 10 Christmas movie lists. What's in your say top 10?
Oh, in my top 10. Well, I would definitely find a space in any Christmas horror top 10 for Silent Night, Deadly Night, which
the first one.
Yeah, the first one. Although the fifth one with Mickey Rooney as a kind of Joe Petto, as a kind of mental toy maker. The fifth one is actually really good too, and is perhaps a bit underrated because it is doing something more interesting, and it's throwing away what the franchise was set up about, which was an axe wielding or psychopathic Santa character. Silent Night, Deadly Night was always something that it took a long time before I saw it, because I don't think it had a video release in the UK, and it took a while for me to watch it because of that. And it was very controversial in America because it had this deliberately kind of advertising campaign, and the parents
killing children.
Yeah, and of course it's not nearly as mad and nasty as the publicity. It had a great tagline, which is "You've made it through Halloween. Now try and survive Christmas." And the reviews were things like, there's a famous review by Leonard Maltin that said, "What next? The Easter Bunny is a child molester," which actually sounds like a good idea for a film. So it kind of really, it's no nastier than the other slasher movies around, but it just had a very kind of controversy courting publicity campaign, which of course did the thing you'd expect and made it more money than it probably would have done without the controversy.
Yeah, that's it.
Everybody remembers it for the bit where Linnea quickly gets impaled on reindeer antlers while topless. And of course, it's the mad killer that is turned on to killing by the color red because of his childhood trauma. Poor Billy. And he's got one of those great movie granddads that says things like, "Oh, Christmas Eve, it's the scariest night of the year," and terrifies him into hating Christmas from when he's about 6. And then, of course, someone kills, or I think they actually rape his mum in front of him, don't they? And then kills off his dad, like a mugger, basically dressed as Santa. And that trauma, and an awful experience at the orphanage where he grows up, which is run by total fascists. It's no surprise that when he goes to work at a toy shop when he's grown up, that he's actually also becoming a bit of a mad psycho.
Yeah. The toy shop that has the axe fully on display for anybody to grab at any time.
Yeah, very convenient.
What could possibly go wrong there?
Will this become relevant later on?
So
Yeah, it's great. It's genuine. It's mean-spirited, and it's very cynical about Christmas. And I think, like you said, as well as the fact that the imagery is great, blood on snow, I think some of the best Christmas horror films are the ones that take all the kind of sweetness and light out of Christmas films and are like, actually, this is a time of greed and awful stuff happening to people.
I've also chucked in my list Gremlins, because you could argue whether it's a horror film or not. Some people argue it's a horror film, but I chucked it in there. What do you think?
Gremlins is absolutely a horror film. Yeah, no question. And it's one of the great Christmas films. And it does a clever thing, really. It's a Joe Dante film produced by Steven Spielberg. And if you looked at it on the surface, you'd think it was more of a Spielbergish film. But when you actually rewatch it, you're like, actually, this is quite nasty, really. It's got gremlins attacking Santa. It takes the piss out of It's a Wonderful Life. It's got loads of nods to horror films and sci-fi films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And it just takes great delight in the gremlins destroying America. They destroy cinema, a bar, an old lady, a toy shop, and ultimately it's a film about how greedy and awful everybody is, because they take this creature out of its natural environment and they mess it up. They break the rules. 3 rules. They only have to follow 3 rules and they totally mess it up. And in the end, they're responsible for this mayhem, which is why the Chinese man comes at the end and tells them off for doing so. He's like, you never learn.
You never learn, but hey, here's a sequel in a couple of years' time.
And of course, Gremlins has the greatest scene in the 80s, which I always assumed, especially as Joe Dante made the film, I always assumed it was played for a kind of sick laugh, which is Phoebe Cates' emotional story of why she hates Christmas.
Possibly, I don't know.
It seems very sarcastic. I think it was intended as a very dark joke. And I remember reading that the studio wanted that scene out because they thought it was too grim, which I guess was the whole point.
We would be amiss to not mention Black Christmas. I don't mean 2006? Could be wrong.
Yeah, 2006, yeah.
And of course, this year's Black Christmas as well. But we obviously on about Black Christmas from 1974.
The original.
Yeah, which potentially is the kickoff of the slasher genre, really.
Yeah.
But we won't mention this one too much because obviously there's the remake coming up, and if we talk about it here, I'd imagine there's going to be stuff that's very similar in the remake. I don't know. We don't know what this remake's going to be like. It may be a completely original story just with the same title. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, do you?
All I know about the remake is that it's the first of the Black Christmas films to have a PG-13 rating, so they're going for a different kind of audience. It's made by Blumhouse, who are the big studio that's doing a lot of horror at the moment. And they have got a new take on it, apparently. It's got a very strange trailer that goes on for very long and seems to be giving away pretty much everything. But then that's trailers, you watch it and you think, this looks like a moment that's possibly part of the big reveal at the finale. Hang on a minute, I may have watched too much.
Yes.
But I suppose, if it's doing something different, if it's pitching at a different audience, maybe that's the best way, because the 2006 Black Christmas was a bit mad, but it was still a kind of slasher movie, and it was borrowing a lot of stuff from the 70s one. So we've kind of already been there and done that.
So what else you got in your top 10 Christmas films? Mine's a top 10, but it's not in any specific order. It's just 10 horror films I tend to watch quite a lot. Me
too. Yeah, well, I had Black Christmas 1974 in there as well, because it's probably the best Christmas horror film. It's definitely the creepiest. It's really, really sinister. It's got a very scary killer. It's got a really, really haunting final scene. And it's just got that great festive atmosphere. It finds something very chilling about a small town in Canada. It's one of the early Canadian slasher films, as you said. And it just has loads of atmosphere. It's got Margot Kidder, who's always good in everything. The best ever Lois Lane, I might add, as well. And it's surprisingly, for a film that, as you said, kind of kickstarted the slasher films and predated Halloween, it's more about suspense and atmosphere. There's not much gore in it. It's quite low key for a slasher film. because it's mostly about being very creepy. So Black Christmas is in there for sure. Christmas Evil was in there too, which also has a great ending. And I also have a film called Dead End from 2003.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That appears on the Horror Channel every now and again in the UK.
What do you think of Dead End?
I don't remember much about it. The fact that you just mentioned it has popped in my head. But I remembered it being watchable. I can't remember much about it, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Dead End fits into the category of what Christmas is really like for a lot of families, as in everybody hates each other and is bickering through the whole thing. It's basically the one where right before Christmas, Ray Wise and Lynn Shay, who's great in Dead End, although she's great in everything, they're traveling with their children. They're all miserable because they don't want to go to see the in-laws on Christmas Eve. Dad does the dad thing of saying, "Oh, we'll go the shortcut," and then gets them completely lost. And they end up on basically a stretch of road that apparently is haunted by the spirit of a young mum that killed herself. Or I think she was killed in an accident actually on the road a few years earlier. So it's basically a modern ghost story, but it's set against this backdrop of a really believable family that are trapped in a car at Christmas, don't want to be together really, going to see grandma. So their family's falling apart in a believable kind of Christmas stress way while this ghost story is unfolding. And it's got great performances by Ray Wise and especially Lynn Shay, who totally flips out in the film and it is always good. It's got one of the endings that, without giving it away, it's fair to say, after The Sixth Sense, we had a lot of twist endings that were sort of variations of the same thing. So Dead End has an ending that's a bit like that, but it's a good, creepy, old-fashioned ghost story.
Well, I've just wrote it down, ready to rewatch, because I don't remember much about it. It's been years since I've watched that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I have a quick rundown of the other ones I got on mine. I have Saint from 2010.
That's good.
Yeah. Better Watch Out, which I think we saw at a Fright Fest event in 2016.
Awesome, yeah.
Not to be confused with Christmas Evil. Same title. Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale from 2010 as well.
Oh, yeah.
I have P2, which only has a very brief Christmas scene in it, but it fits in the Christmas area. Must remember that one, don't you?
Yeah, P2's great, isn't it? It's got, what's the name, in the parking lot, and Wes Bentley as the, doesn't he love Elvis? Isn't he an Elvis-loving psychopath? Yeah, P2's fun. Yeah, that's really good. Underrated.
And the other one, which I just put on there because why not? And it's not to be confused with the Michael Keaton film, Jack Frost.
Jack Frost. It ain't Frosty. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's it's a bit different to the Michael Keaton one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit little bit different. Yeah.
Because the Michael Keaton one doesn't have somebody having a bath and getting molested by a snowman's carrot.
Yeah, there isn't cussing and swearing in it either. No. But it's one of them films that, along with Frozen, if you had little kids and you was like, go pick a film to watch, and they went to your DVD shelf, you'd hope you have to pick up the right one. So they pick up Jack Frost, so they pick up the wrong one, or even Frozen, pick up the wrong Frozen film.
Oh, it's the one with the wolves. It's the one with the ski lift.
That's good. That'd be a completely different Christmas.
Oh man!
But what have you got on your 10?
The 10. It was quite tricky actually, and I didn't include Rare Exports, although I was considering it because I really like Rare Exports. I nearly included a film called Stalled, which is the one about the janitor that has to fend off loads of basically his colleagues at work while they have the Christmas party and become zombies. So he's fending them off with toilet rolls and sanitary waste bins and hair dryers and stuff. That's really good. I nearly included Secret Santa, which was at Fright Fest last year, which is another.
I've got his name.
Adam Marcus.
Yes, that's his name. Yeah.
Which is another really bitter and twisted film, where it's all about, isn't it? It's all about a family gathering at Christmas where everyone loses their inhibitions and starts not just insulting each other, but ultimately killing each other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really good. I thought about including Inside, which is the absolutely absolute gore fest, the French film, which is set on Christmas Eve. But then I thought, well, there's nothing Christmassy about it except that it's set on Christmas Eve, so I don't think that counted. But other ones, Late Night Trains, the 70s exploitation films, really good. Pranks is one of the To All a Good Night, they're Christmas slasher films which are quite good. Santa's Sleigh, which is the one with wrestler Bill Goldberg.
Yeah, that was one of the because when I was growing up, I was watching. We moved to a town, and it's like, oh, we could pick up Channel 5, which was a big thing at the time. You could pick up Channel 5 on your TV. I was like, WCW's on. What's this? So I was watching wrestling because I'd seen this Bill Goldberg character. I was like, oh, he's really cool. And then that Santa Sleigh came out, so I had to watch it. It is an entertaining film.
It's great. It's actually, it probably should have been in the top 10 because it's absolutely brilliant. It's the movie in which James Caan gets choked to death with turkey legs, and Bill Goldberg's running around on hell deer and knocking the heads off Christ statues and running over old ladies. Santa Sleigh, you have to watch. Yeah. It does have one of the great opening sequences of anything probably.
That's one of the films I've got on my ones to check out at least once list.
You need to. There's a really creepy film called The Children, which is set at Christmas, which is the British film. It's really good. Mum and Dad has a great Christmas scene. Is this kind of sort of torture movie about an awful pair of parents, and it's got a scene that kind of sums up Christmas in Britain. You know, Mum and Dad are pissed on sherry, and the presents are a bit crap, and the decorations are awful, and there's a person nailed to the wall. So that's a really good one. There's quite a good anthology called A Christmas Horror Story with William Shatner as a radio DJ. I quite like that one. There's a fantastic short film called Treevenge, which is where the Christmas trees, after years and decades of oppression, decide to start attacking humans. That's about 10 minutes long and is probably as good as anything on this list. And what didn't quite make the list was Red Christmas, which is the Dee Wallace film from, let's say, a couple of years ago, I think. Kind of a retro 80s slasher film about a family reunion where, in quite a kind of original twist, Dee Wallace's aborted baby who survived the abortion comes back home grown up, kind of dressed like the Elephant Man, and it's all about the bitterness and the kind of dark secrets coming out of the family closet. But in between, you get like people being killed off with umbrellas and kitchen blenders and being chopped in half by an axe. So it's Red Christmas is a really good movie, actually.
All right, and a couple of the others I've got on my list are Why Hide, which was known as Christmas Presents, came out in 2018. Which pretty sure it's out on DVD in the UK. That's worth a watch. Might be on Amazon Prime now, actually.
I think it's on Shudder.
It could be. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
All Through the House, which is another slasher film, sort of independent slasher film from 2015. Oh. I've chucked in the short film Axmas by John Ward, which is the one with the guy going around a storage unit hacking up people. Oh. Which you reviewed a while back, actually, I think.
Yeah, that's good fun. Yeah.
I've also randomly chucked in Santa Claus versus the Devil, which isn't really a horror film. It's a Mexican fantasy film from 1959. It's completely bonkers. So it'd probably fit in the same genre of mentalness as Dracula versus Frankenstein. And if we talk about any Silent Night, Deadly Night sequel, you can't go amiss without mentioning Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, if only for the famous Garbage Day.
Garbage Day.
With the outstanding eyebrow acting in that scene.
That's fantastic. That's just a great film. Yeah, you have to watch that. It's compulsory.
Yeah. But there's a few definitely. I mean, in the issue 205 of the Dark Side magazine, British Horror magazine, there is a 8-page section, I believe, because 8 pages on horror films. That's worth a read. We've only mentioned barely a handful, I would have said, of the actual horror genre Christmas films, but there's loads out there worth watching.
Of course, there's Tales from the Crypt, the British anthology.
Yeah,
which is great.
the guess you could say the League of Gentlemen's Christmas special.
Yeah, that's really creepy. And the episode of Inside Number 9 that they did for Christmas last year, I think, was kind of a really clever thing where it started out as what appeared to be an audio commentary of a forgotten 1970s TV show, but then turned into something really sinister. That's
Devil of Christmas.
Yes, that's terrific. That's really good.
Oh, what I want to see, I don't know if you've seen it, is Massacre on Aisle 12.
No, I haven't seen that one.
But of course, there's loads of those Krampus films out there as well.
Oh yeah, on my top 10 was the 2015 Krampus, which is great actually, because it's in the spirit of things like Gremlins. Has some great monsters, great looking, has a really kind of downbeat ending. Krampus, yeah, that's the bet. There's a whole bunch of, as you say, low budget Krampus movies.
Yep, and there's probably, well, to be honest, you think about how many Christmas themed horror movies have come out since Krampus. That's probably not going to slow down anytime soon.
No, that's it. Better Watch Out is one of the best ones. A kind of sadistic or even more sadistic extension, or I suppose reversal of Home Alone, complete with the paint cans.
Yeah.
Await Further Instructions is a really good British take on it, which kind of unfolds in this horrible Brexit era family where they wake up with shutters all around the house, and everybody falls out because they're blaming each other. There's a great French film called Shaitan, or Satan for English peasants, which has a really kind of nasty punchline where somebody gets their eyes gouged out just so they can entertain a newborn Christmas baby. That's a good one. Very French, but it's like a French take on all those inbred families of kind of Vietnam era American horror, like Texas Chainsaw. That's a delight. And of course, for all your Christmas-based horror needs, is Anna and the Apocalypse, which is the best ever horror zombie musical set at Christmas.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything.
It's terrific. Check it out. Oh, did you ever watch Christmas Season Massacre, which is the one with it was part of that, I don't know if they're still around, Sub Rosa, those guys that used to make independent horror films, and that's kind of like a $10 tribute to this is one of the ones I saw. I didn't see many of them, but it's about One Shoe McGrew, this kid that's bullied at school. He's got an eye patch because that's the only present he ever got as a kid, so he still wears that, and he basically kills off his old kind of classmates at a reunion. That's a really good one. So
I would definitely say we've probably given the listeners a good section of horror movies to check out if they even haven't seen any of them, because some of them are pretty well known and some are probably less so.
Sure.
But you got any others on your list that you want to mention?
I think that's possibly all of them, although I've got a terrible feeling I may have missed some out. Christmas Blood was the Norwegian one from a couple of years ago, which was quite good.
It's known as Jewel Blood.
Yeah, well. That was actually really well done. He's like got his own naughty list and he's killing off, I think, people that are just generally breaking the law.
Yep.
There's the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which was just called Silent Night, which is actually one of the better remakes from that period. There's the one which it didn't start it all, but it's an early one, Silent Night, Bloody Night, which had its own kind of shot on video sequel not long ago.
Yeah, Homecoming, I think it was called.
Yes, which is quite weird. There's the Val Kilmer film, I think it is, The Traveller. There's the Christmas Eve monster movie, The Blackout, and there's a really good ghost story called Wind Chill, which is one of those kind of Christmassy.
Has that got Kate Beckinsale in it? Is that one?
It's got somebody famous, but I can't remember who. It's got a famous female actress in the lead. Yeah, it may well have been.
She gets trapped in the car for a bit.
Yeah.
I think that's Kate Beckinsale.
That makes sense. And I think Christmas is a great setting for ghost stories. There's a lot of good ghost stories for Christmas that the BBC used to make, and there's a particularly good Christmas section in the old British horror anthology Dead of Night, which is a nice spooky 1940s film. with that festive segment. So you've got a massive amount of Christmas horror, and a lot of them are really worth watching at least once.
Yeah. So we've definitely given people something to put on their watch list, even if they only watch them once.
You've got to watch all of them this Christmas, all of them.
They got to watch them all before Christmas.
Yeah. No excuses. You're not busy with anything else. Watch all of these films. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Oh yes, it would be interesting to see what other films people come back with, possibly ones we've not even heard of.
Yeah, absolutely.
But do you want to say anything else about this? I've got everything done on my end.
I think so. I was just going to read out my Christmas list, but I suppose nobody wants to hear that. It's quite long. Mostly outfits, shoes.
Oh, okay. So we'll skip your wish list for Christmas. You can put biscuits. It on your biscuits.
Yeah.
You can put it down on your Christmas list for Santa and see what Santa Claus brings you.
He's always got a big sack, hasn't he?
And he's always ready to empty it.
Oh, straight up my chimney on Christmas Eve.
So that's it for this episode. Next episode, in the Retro Rewind, we'll be talking about the 1971 movie The Corpse Grinders, directed by Ted V. Nichols, which, as you mentioned earlier, you haven't seen.
I've seen it, but I don't remember anything at all about it. So I'm looking forward to it. So
I've seen the first one, I've seen the second one, and I still haven't seen the third one yet. But the only one we're going to talk about is the first one. You're probably surprised there's 2 sequels to it.
I didn't know there were any sequels. Is Ted V. Michaels still around? Is he still married to about 26 people?
I have no idea, to be honest. I'm sure he died recently, didn't he?
I think so. I know that I think he lived in a castle, and he was a kind of Hugh Hefner figure that had a lot of wives.
I think he did sequels to Astro Zombies as well.
Ah, yeah.
And something else. What was that? What's that film that your friend likes, or was that The Corpse Grinders?
Yeah, The Corpse Grinders, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there was something else as well. But yeah, he did sequels to Astro Zombies as well. So it'd be interesting to see what they turned out like. So yeah, next episode, we will talk about The Corpse Grinders. And as our main talking point, we will be going through our top films of 2019, which is going to be a challenge.
Oh, it's been a good year.
Yep. I was only writing a few down the other day, and then I start remembering more. So my list will have to be chopped down quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a lot around. And of course, there's a sequel to Adam Green's Frozen. Frozen 2 is out this week.
Yep, that one, the singing one. Yeah.
Yep, Anna and Elsa on a ski lift.
Yep, and Hatchet turns up randomly.
Yeah, it's a real twist, that. Yeah.
So yeah, we've got all that going on in the next episode, which will be available on the majority of podcast platforms, which include, does Stephen know? Can you
Spotify.
Okay, Spotify. That's it.
Bebo, MySpace.
No. So I'm available on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Alexa Tuning, Google Podcasts, and amongst others. There's loads of them out there. But soon we will be on iTunes as well, so you'll be able to find us on pretty much any podcast platform just by searching up Horror Screens Podcast, and we should pop up. And that next episode will be available on the 27th of December, so just after Christmas. We will return.
Wonderful.
So until then, let us know what Christmas films you will add to your list. And from myself, it's goodbye. And from Stephen,
it's also goodbye.